Welcome to NeverTheLess podcast with Bidemi Mark-Mordi, a show dedicated to organic leaders and leaderpreneurs. Today, you would learn how to discover your essence and live more powerfully.
Welcome back to the NeverTheLess show, a show for organic leaders and leaderpreneurs. And in this month, we have been talking about success. My name is John Namaka, and I have with me Pastor Bidemi, and she has been showing us different dimensions of success. In the last episode, we talked about the true meaning of success, where we learned a lot of valuable things. Thank you for your comments, and please keep them coming. So in this episode, we are also going to be talking about the consequence of success. So when you hear the word consequence, for somebody like me, what you think about is bad stuff. You know, when you did something wrong, then this is the consequence growing up. So what do you have in mind, consequence of success?
Actually, consequence, by dictionary definition, a consequence is the effect, result, or outcome of something that has occurred earlier.
Okay.
So a consequence is the outcome or result from choices, decisions, or behavior prior.
Okay.
And no, a consequence is not negative.
Always a bad thing.
A consequence is just an outcome.
Okay.
So today we're looking at the consequences of success, because we want to look when a man begins to become successful. Again, remember, by the dimensions and the definitions that they have decided to be successful, what are the likely consequences that they would have to deal with? I find that for everything that we are called to, it makes sense that we are prepared. My thing is always know what is coming so that you can prepare. There is always learning. As far as I'm concerned, there is nothing that you cannot learn. So if you know what is coming and you learn it ahead, then when it comes, you will have the capacity to absorb it and keep standing where you are. So now that we have redefined success, now that we have looked at what true success means and entails, what are the consequences of success? Because if you get the first two episodes, the chances are higher that you are successful. A lot more of us will be able to describe ourselves as successful, because for once, you are not judging your success by the parameters that someone else has set. Yes?
Yes.
So a consequence, like I said, of the consequences of success are therefore not all negative. They are the things that success induced on people, the things that success will bring your way, the things that become a flow out of your successful stance and what you need to do to keep your success going. Because of course, I'm sure you know one or two people that we call them flash in the pan successes. Today they were here, tomorrow they were no. Today they are here, tomorrow they are no more. And we begin to ask questions like, what happened to them? The one-hit wonders. What was the thing that happened that they couldn't sustain or continue to replicate success? This is where you understand, or you would begin to appreciate when I said that success is traceable. That unless you are able to trace it, you know what made you successful the first time, you won't be able to replicate it. And unless you know what made you successful, you won't be able to tell another person or share with another person so that they too can become successful. So we want to look at the consequences of success. And like I told you before we started, this is hopefully a short episode. It's not going to be as long as the other ones because they are straightforward. But the first consequence of success is that relationships change. Relationships change. And that is important for everyone to be ready for. I tell you, I had moved from one level of success to another, but I wasn't ready for relational change. What happened in that time was that I found myself in a place where I suddenly didn't have people who could see what I was seeing. Most of them knew me from when the previous
they couldn't
season.
Handle this.
And then it's not that they couldn't handle it. Maybe it's even me, because I wasn't thinking that relationships tend to change. I did not give them the right information so that they could remain in my life. Does that make sense?
It does.
So relationships change when success begins to come or begins to happen. And it's not a bad thing, but it can become a bad thing. And I'll explain. When relationships change within success, two things happen. You have now to craft a new cycle a new circle of friends or circle of people that you go, because I have an expression that I use. You've heard me use it before. It's at the level of your future. So when you become successful, this is the way I imagine it for those of us on watching the video, that you go full circle, and then you elevate. So now when you elevate, you don't feed at the level you've elevated to. You have to feed at a level above you, a step ahead of you. Now, to be able to feed at a step ahead of you, you have to know people at that level. And so because this will become brand new relationships that you have to forge, what happens most of the time is we get so focused on forging those relationships that the ones that we used to have before begin to suffer. And when those ones begin to suffer, what tends to happen is they fizzle out.
Yes.
So when relationships change, here's the thing that I have learned. I can't say I've mastered it 100%, but I'm learning to. Is that make sure you keep what is useful, who was useful for you in the previous season, even as you forge the next season. Because otherwise you find yourself in a place where you are now thinking to yourself, these people don't quite, you get into this circle, the language is different. The verbiage is different. The courage is different. The presence is different. Everything is different above. And so you get there, and if you are not careful, if you don't have those that used to travel with you, one of the negative consequences is you begin to lose authenticity. Because you find yourself at that level trying to become what they want you to be. You have to have the same kind of conversations. If you're in ministry, you have to see vision at the level they see vision, because otherwise they don't take you serious. Do you understand it? You find yourself, if you forget and you crack a joke, they look at you like, seriously, you still crack this kind of jokes. So you find yourself trying to become this person. But you must not lose yourself simply because success happened and your circles are changing. Do you see it?
Yes.
So what I have now learned is every season of my life, again, even in relationships, who are your immovables? Because unless you know who your immovables are, you will drop everything else or everyone else like hot potato. And the sad part of it is, you see, at that level that you're going, they already have their clique. They already know what they're doing. And 80% of the time, they really don't care enough to make room for you. So you find yourself struggling to belong where you need to belong. You should be. But because you've dropped this, so you find yourself floating. Success makes relationships change. There's no prayer that will stop relationships from changing. So it takes an intentionality now to know, okay, John is an immovable, Dennis is an immovable, this person is an immovable. So no matter what is shaking and whatever needs to drop, these ones are not movable. They don't you do the extra work to help them see that you have not changed.
So let me take you on what you just said. There are people that are immovable. How do I know people that are immovable and the ones that I need to let go of?
By the contributions they made in the last season, especially in counsel. Not so much in anything else, in counsel and in being able to stand with you. So by the contributions they made in the last season, you can determine who is immovable. Now, again, when we're talking of who now is movable, if we now know who is immovable, I'll tell you, every success also attracts people at the level you used to be who don't no longer like you. They would get upset. They are now intimidated or something. Yes. They begin to have an inferiority complex and they begin to. You can see it in their vibe. You can hear it in their tones. Those ones you need to definitely move away from. But there would always be 1, 2, 3.
Not very many,
but these ones are immovable. They can be around you every season because they are, one way to know them is they are assured in who they are.
They are also successful.
You get it. Their definition of success is together.
Yes.
So they are not threatened by this your newfound thing. Do you see it?
I understand.
So relationships change. That's one of the big changes that happen or consequences of success. And depending on how you play it, I was reading, I can't remember what I was reading recently, and I read that every leader is always in transition. Every leader is always in transition, and every leader is always transitioning people. So if you don't understand what the transitions will take from you, or how you should help other people transition, then it can spiral out of control. Like I told you, I've been there before. When it happened to me, what had happened was my levels had changed. I had been able to curate a brand new circle.
Yeah.
But at this circle, what was wrong with me was not, I didn't want, it wasn't that I let them go. It was I didn't want to let them go.
Oh.
I didn't want to let them go, but they didn't want to come with me.
So it's not one way.
No, yes, it can be. No, I wanted them to come with me. You know, I had my husband talk to them. It was many things. I could see that there was room at this place for all of us. But maybe they had, you remember that thing I said that for some people, the definition of success is to believe that they can.
Yes.
So maybe they couldn't believe that they could. So every time I tried to drag them, they became a weight and they were pulling me down. So this was suffering, that was suffering. And I was the one that suffered the most. So ultimately, at some point, I had to let go. It was one of the hardest things that I did. Because I wept for days, because these people were in the trenches together. You know, when there was nothing, we were there together. When nobody knew us, we were there together. But you can't force someone who isn't ready to transition. So you need to understand the science and the art of transitioning when relationships change. Do you see it?
Yes.
So that's one thing, that one major consequence of success. Who should you keep around you? People who influence you. They've always been a positive influence for you. People who are truth tellers. People who are non-judgmental. Because no matter how successful you are, you would always find yourself in certain areas falling short. You want someone around you. Because here's the thing, the new circle that you are breaking into, they cannot be as forgiving as your old one.
Wow.
Because they are learning you as well. So the first time you fail, their antenna goes up. They think this is who you are.
Yes.
So it's a red flag.
Yes.
So you need these ones who are non-judgmental, who are truth tellers regardless. You need to be able to carry them along with you to be able to go that route. So the question is, how do I do that? By ensuring that you validate them. For instance, even in marriage situations, you know, we hear stories of men who become public office holders, and the next thing we hear is they marry another wife. And usually we castigate them like, why would you do that? You had someone who was in the trenches with you. Sometimes it is not because the man doesn't want the woman to transition with them. It's because all the while the man was preparing to transition, she didn't prepare.
She wasn't ready.
And now that the transition has come, she's intimidated by that place. Do you see it? So even in marriages, when success hits, how we did before success hits can determine how we do. In some of the things that I have had to do in the course of my journey, you know, with each level of success, I had to remind myself that I have to be a bit more intentional in how I do with my spouse. Because otherwise, all of this can make you begin to think that this is no longer relevant. Do you see?
I understand.
So that's one way that success is impacted, or success gets to impact our lives. Another way is that you find yourself in the need for overhauling. And I know that before we started, I shared that with you, and you were like, why? You have to overhaul your image. You see, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to you, and I was talking to you about something I called executive presence.
Yes.
That sometimes success itself happens not because of how well you know how to do something, but your presence in the room.
Yes.
So as you begin to transition in these things, they will say to you, oh, there is a certain way you should dress. There is a certain way you should look. And, you know, that also has its downside, because it can make you begin to lose authenticity. And so to deal with that place where you have to find yourself, adjusting your image, you must be that person who knows what they want to look like. Because if you make it only about the outside, or my new hairstyles, where I now do my nails, the kinds of clothes I wear, the kinds of bags I carry, if all of that becomes who you are and you lose your authenticity, you will suffer. Again, remember that as accomplished as you are, the level of your future is still suspicious of you. So you can't just go there and then determine that, they're wearing Gucci, so as long as I wear Gucci, I blend in. It's not the clothes that make the man. It's the man that makes the clothes. So when you get in that place and you find yourself having to work on your image, make sure that you are comfortable enough, because anything I said to people, I say I'm over 50 and I'm over wearing anything that makes me uncomfortable. So when I'm shopping now, comfort is priority. I'm not trying to make any points. I'm not trying to
make a statement or something.
Nothing. I must be comfortable. At this level of my life, the things that I want to do with my life and the people I need to touch, I can't get there and be uncomfortable. Because discomfort affects executive presence. Do you see it?
Yes.
So you must know that, your image would need a tweaking, but don't tweak the outside and forget the inside. As you're tweaking, again, let's go back to our word. Know your immovables. Character is immovable or immutable for me. No matter what I do, I'm not going to be shifting here.
Okay.
Because otherwise, you just find yourself now what Jesus called whitewashed sepulchres. On the inside, you're still bones. Because in your core, no matter how successful you are, you're still the person that you are. If you like Bolle before, you don't just automatically just change from you may go out and form that I no longer eat roasted plantain. But when you are with your homies, that's the thing you crave. Because that's who you are. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay.
It does make sense. I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, for me to deal with the success, I must first of all be able to balance how I need to be right now and how I originally should be.
Exactly.
So it's taking us back to the first definition.
Yes.
Who has God made you to be? So if I understand that properly, it helps me adjust and say, okay, these are immovables. I don't change this. I don't change that. I remain.
No matter what.
But I want to ask, many times we say, don't change the external, change the internal. We've said all these things. How do I really strike a balance? Now, I have to look a certain way. I have to act in a certain way. This is what is demanded. How do I know, okay, I'm crossing the line really?
Okay, what are your beliefs? What are your values? Any line that will make me cross the line of beliefs and values, I will not do that.
Beliefs and values.
Yes. When I'm talking about principles that form the bedrock for your life. Your core values, that's what they call them in business. So for me, for instance, there are 3 words. There is purpose, there's integrity, there's excellence. There's nothing I'm changing that will make me compromise
on these 3 things.
I will never do that. I will never do that. So again, once you know those things, and then someone says to you, oh, you see, because it's not integrity. If, for instance, you become, just because you have grown to a certain level, you begin to shunt in business, you begin to lie to people, and they say to you, oh, that's how it is done for the big money.
For you to, you have to just tell a white lie.
You see it. So you need to know those things that hold you up and say, no matter what, I'm going to be changing and tweaking. I'm not going to be changing and tweaking these things. And politely say to them, no, thank you. I see what you mean, but I'm sorry, I cannot do this. This is who I am. And how I deal with those things is from the moment I walk through the door, I tell you who I am.
Okay.
So that we're not confused. I don't even need you suggesting what doesn't align with my beliefs to me. So I haven't had found myself in a place where I'm tempted because somebody suggested something and is against my values, 80% of the time, they pretty much know what I believe in and who I am and what I would do. And so they don't suggest that. They actually are the ones that will say things like, oh, we can't even ask this one. Like in my husband's office, those years ago, many years ago, they used to have this TGIF that, oh, they will all go out somewhere and they will drink, they will eat, da, 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 da. And they never invited him. So one day he asked, where are you people always going to on Friday? And you don't invite me. And they say, Pastor, we can't invite you. So that tells the story already. Do you see it? So that's how I think that we should deal with it.
So I want to ask, you said something about clearly defining who you are once you get into a place. How do you balance it so that, you're eating at the level of your future? You don't want to disappoint those people that are already there, let them not think of you in a certain way or close the door.
Well, if being the person that I am, because the person that I am is not a bad person. If being the person that I am is why they will close the door, is fine. All of these things just take a decision and a sacrifice. You need to know that there are things I will not be. Jesus even said it, or the Bible says it like this: there are certain things that must not be mentioned amongst you. So if they say, oh, every Friday clubbing is how we make the contacts for the business, then I probably would not be making that contact. And I have to have settled this. That predetermining your bottom line and say, okay, now
I won't do this.
I'm sorry, I cannot do this. What I find is, even if they walked away from you, when a day comes and the only person that can do what they need is someone who has a level of integrity, they come back to you. And that's still fine.
That's still fine.
Yes.
We still have some thoughts to share with you, but we're going to do that after we return from this break.
In a world filled with many fears and discouragement, life often becomes a burden. For those who know the way, life is just simple. Do not worry, you're not alone on this life's journey, as Bidemi Mark-Mordi shares powerful insights and principles from her everyday work and life experiences in her book, NeverTheLess. NeverTheLess is a book designed to encourage and equip you to face life with courage, hope, and determination. Get a copy of NeverTheLess and other books written by Bidemi Mark-Mordi, like The Wisdom of the Seed, Honor, The Theology of Work, and so much more from a bookstore nearby, or call 080-905-63555, or send an email to bidemi@bidemimarkmordi.com to place your order. I guarantee you will make it, nevertheless.
So it's still the NeverTheLess show, a show for organic leaders and leaderpreneurs. And in the first half of this episode, we have been talking to you about certain consequences of success. And one of them that has stood out to me is how that your circle gets to change and how you must manage that effectively. And we're going to allow our speaker continue from where she had stopped.
Okay, so John, we were looking at the consequences of success. Welcome back, everyone. We had looked at relational change, that your relationships tend to change, and the fact that you may need to work on your image. And when relationships change, we've talked about that in depth. And when you have to work on your image, make sure that your inside is consistent with your outside. Just so that we can quickly move on, I want to talk to us about the third consequence. Do you know that there's something called success-induced depression?
This is about the first time I'm hearing this.
Okay, success-induced depression is depression that happens because of the isolation that comes with success. Because when you succeed, remember I gave you the example of something that happened with me where people would not. I was trying to get them to come with me, to transition with me, and they couldn't just say. Honestly, even though I had a new team, I had a new group ahead of me, that one was my comfort level. And so when they fizzled out, I was sad for a long time. I was sad for a long time because I couldn't handle the fact that, in those days, and when something happens to me, they were the first that I'll call. If I needed someone to agree with me in prayer, I'd call them. And now this transition had happened and I no longer had them. I'm still learning these new people. I'm not sure about their capacity to pray. I'm not sure how they pray. There are many things I'm still learning about these new ones. So there's something actually, is a thing. Success-induced depression is the kind of thing that Elijah suffered after the battle and in Mount Carmel.
The prophets of Baal.
Yes. So it's that happens. And when you find yourself in a place where you see the person, he's really successful. You want to be him, but you can tell something is missing.
Off. Right?
You're wondering what is it?
Exactly
because also in that place, you have to now be a tad more careful. Everything you say, everything you do becomes news, quote and unquote. It affects people. So in a bid to be careful and careful and careful, your circle shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. And when you find yourself hitting this SID, success-induced depression, the first thing, if we take a leaf from what God told Elijah to do, was to rest. Don't make decisions. Don't determine. Don't ask questions. Just shut it all down and rest. Because sometimes all that it takes is when you are rested enough, you receive strength, you are revived and refreshed, and you can make a go at it again. That's why you cannot do this journey without being someone who understands the principle of rest is not a suggestion. So rest, take time out, do what makes you happy, but just rest. Then number 2, you need to go to familiar places. When I need to rest like that, I go to familiar places. My proper rest I do proper rest yearly in November. And when I make those trips, I always go to somewhere I know someone and somewhere I'm comfortable. I never make my November trips. In fact, this is the first one I'm going to make. I'm making a trip now, a rest trip. And it's the first time I'm going to brand new territory. But even in going to brand new territory, I've invited some of my familiar people to come with me. Because then you need to find yourself in the things that you know. Because what has happened, why it is success-induced is because this new thing is impacting so much upon your mind that is making you feel like, oh my God, what am I doing? Will I get it right? The pressure is already there to get it right. But if you can find your rest time, if you can find familiar places with people that you can be vulnerable, you will find that everything takes a mastering. Once you master that patch, you don't find yourself there again. Because in the case of Elijah, the moment he mastered it, and God told him, you are not by any stretch of imagination the only person.
It settled the conversation. It settled
things. Do you see it? Then you must be authentic. One of the things that happens with successful people is that less and less and less, we find it, or more and more and more, we find it difficult to ask for help. Know the help you need and ask for it. None of us, your success in tech does not make you Superman in all other areas. Relationally, you may still be awkward. Ask for help where you need it. Be authentic. Even if you can't find an old body, in the new circle, craft relationships and come with your authentic foot and say, this is who I am. I'm not trying to impress you or anything. This is who I am. SID amplifies, success amplifies your reach, gives you opportunity for more good. That's another consequence of success.
Okay. Before you went to this new consequence, I wanted to ask a question. You talked about rest.
Yes.
Strange, I don't know if it happens to everyone, but there are some times that it's hard to rest. Just knowing that, I have this level to maintain. You don't just want to shut down, you want to reply all those emails, you want to keep in touch. You just want to make sure you have not crashed what
Don't
you're
worry.
building.
Don't worry.
How do
will
you
get there?
How do you rest?
I used to think that I could go, and really I could go 72 hours or more with little or no sleep. And I'd be coherent. I'm not hung out or strung out on coffee, and I'll get everything done that I needed to do. But as you age, your body doesn't allow for that anymore. So, when you have the energy, by all means, continue to do it. But I have found that if I had scheduled more rest in my past, I would not need as much rest as I need now. I can be looking at my phone and it's ringing. I'm not lying down.
I think
I'm
that's
not
a grace.
sleeping. No, I couldn't do that before. I'm not lying down. I'm not sleeping. I'm not busy. But I'm looking at the phone and I'm saying to myself, I do not have the mental bandwidth right now to take this call. So I'm not going to take it. When eventually I return the call or I take the call at another time, I do not lie that I was busy. I just say, I saw your call, but I just couldn't deal with it in the moment.
The authenticity comes back again.
I'm allowed to not be able to deal with certain things in certain moments. That's what keeps us human. And that's what makes us depend on God to continue to run. Ultimately, you find that in all of those acrobatics, you're running on fumes. And it is never, never good. So once you find yourself in a place where, how I know that I'm getting there is I begin to sigh a lot and I begin to hiss. I know that whatever I'm doing, I need to step away from it. And sometimes it's not even because I have succeeded at the level I want. It's just because I've been at it for so long that it is beginning to gnaw at me in the wrong place. So I step away from it. Just take the time and be refreshed and come back. Watch one Netflix movie and come back to it, and you'll be amazed what you can do.
That's a fantastic tip. Yes. I'm going to be implementing for myself. Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome. I was talking about the fact that success amplifies your reach and gives you the opportunity for more good. So, and that's a good thing, isn't it?
It is a good thing.
It doesn't have a downside to it. It's just what it is. You can do more, you can be more. So go for it. From our definition, saying that church success is understanding the power of generosity.
Yes.
Get there and get it done. Another consequence of success is the need to work harder to keep at being successful.
The reward of more.
There's this word, that there's this idiom that goes around that they say that new levels, new devils. So as you elevate, the things you have to deal with elevate as well. But that's why if you're a true leader, delegation becomes something that you know how to do. The pressure to perform cannot be what you hold on to. And when I find myself in the place of the pressure to perform, I go to the most basics of things. That is, how did I take my first step before? Every time I take a leap and I do great things, it always reminds me of the fact that I took the first step because God told me to. And so when I find the pressure to perform, as a matter of fact, I've reached the place again. Maybe this is a gift of age, but I've reached the place again that if it is real pressure that I must do it, I don't do it. I push back in pressure. Say, you have to do it now. I said, no, I don't have to do anything. I'm not doing it now. And Yola will tell you, but I said, no, I'm not doing it now. There's nothing in this word that says I have to do it now. And that's because I don't want to succumb to that toxic way of living anymore. Then, of course, when you find yourself at some levels of success, there will be what I call hate. It comes with positivity. In the case of David, David has killed his 10,000. Saul has killed his thousands. David has killed his 10,000. David did not ask anybody to sing about him. But it makes you, it puts you in the eye of people. They begin to think that you have powers that you actually do not have. And that's why we get really disappointed with successful people. Because we see someone succeed in business and we think that they must succeed in their marriage, in their family, in their this and in their that. And when that doesn't compute, we come with gross disappointment. The reason is because they were still who they were, even though they succeeded in one
some
thing.
other areas.
Do you see that?
Yeah.
So the pressure to work harder to be successful is not a pressure I like. So to deal with it, I always remind myself about where I'm coming from. There was a day I had nothing. There was a day I couldn't do nothing. There was a day I dare not sit in front of a camera like this and say 2 words. I will freeze. So I know where I'm coming from. I've come a long way. So if this is where it ends for me, I've done well. Finally, another consequence of success is what I call the what next syndrome.
You were saying something about hate as a consequence.
Yes.
And I think I want to learn personally how to deal with it. You cited the example of David, Saul has killed his thousands, David has 10,000s. And David didn't want to have problem with Saul. He didn't want to get into Saul's bad books. But the people now have started saying stuff. All right. Saul heard it, Saul got angry. But how do you think, or how do you suggest you manage, especially if your Saul is your mentor, in quotes, is somebody who you are trying to eat at that level? How do you manage the relationship when they are hyping you?
What I have done is, especially in those places, for instance, in interviews where they're hyping me, I always, there is no major interview anybody has done on me in the last 10 years that will not mention my coach. I always make sure I bring them into the room with me. Honor. Because if you look at David, that's what he tried to do. Saul was too far gone, and we know God had a hand in Saul's own manifestations. But David acted honorably from the beginning to the end. That's what I have learned to do. It doesn't matter whether my coach is doing stuff today or she's not doing stuff. She's my coach. Somebody asked me recently that, what other coach have you had? I said, I've had this one coach. It's 12 years or so. I've had this one coach. When she's coaching me, she's my coach. When she's not coaching me, she's still my coach. Do you see it? So, because no matter what, they will come to recognize that there's nothing. Honor. So everywhere I go, I'd always talk about her. I'd always tell people, oh, my coach this, oh, my coach that. Because it is important that they see that I did not become this person by myself. People have a hand in who I become. Just the same way everywhere I go, I'll talk about my husband. Because these two people contributed tremendously to this thing that people can see today. So that's what I think you should do. Honor. So I was talking about what is next syndrome. What the consequence of what is next does to us is it makes it hard for us to enjoy success at the level that we are in. And that happens to me a lot. I just finished a book. They just delivered it. Everybody's looking at the book and they're saying, oh, this is really good. And I'm thinking, oh my God, so what next? Oh, shouldn't we have done this better? Okay, what else can I do? I find that every time I'm like that, I end up not enjoying what it is that I have achieved. It's a consequence of success, and we need to learn to manage it. So this is what I have for this episode.
You said something about enjoying, don't start thinking what next. How do you balance complacency and not getting hooked up on what's next?
I don't know, because I'm still learning that. But here's what I know. If I put everything I do through the filter of God wants me to do, I can always tell what is God within the timetable that He's given me. I know when I'm the one pushing me, and I know when God is the one pushing me. And for instance, in the last 3 years, it's been a bit slow for me because of some health things I had to go through. And in that time, I had to say to myself, it's someone who's alive that gets things done. So even though I want to do this and do that and be here and be there, I'm not able to do that now. And that's okay. I'll focus on recouping and, getting my strength back so that when I get there, I'll be able to do it again. So it's just self-talk. You need to keep telling yourself what it is that works for you. Because what works for them is not what will work for me. And as long as I know what works for me, it helps.
Well, thank you very much for that.
All right. So
with this, we have come to the end of today's episode. We believe that you have been blessed in tremendous ways. We want to know how it has blessed you. So please do well to leave us a comment and tell us what you think.
Remember, if you embrace your superpower, you live purposeful lives. My name is Bidemi Mark-Mordi, and I've had John here drilling me all of this while. We'll see you next week if Jesus tarries. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you for listening to Nevertheless. For more information and resources, call 080-90563-555 or send an email to bidemi@bidemimarkmordi.com. Don't forget, discovering your purpose helps you live more powerfully.